Leonidas, king of Sparta. His name echoes through time. The Spartan king who led 300 men to Thermopylae, where they held off the might of the Persian Empire. At least, that's what Hollywood would have you believe. But there's more to Leonidas than meets the eye. There's a lot more. And in this video, we are going to find out who really was King Leonidas. Welcome to the channel. To understand who Leonidas was, we must first talk about Sparta. Sparta was one of several Hellenistic city-states dotted around Greece during the Archaic and Classical periods, each fiercely independent from one another. In many ways, though, Sparta was unique. Unlike most city-states, it had an elite military force at its heart, an army so formidable it never lost a single battle. Sparta was also incredibly conservative and traditional, with a strict social structure and customs that changed little over the centuries. Sparta was ruled by two kings, both of whom had to be of royal lineage, and were expected to be brave, strong, and intelligent. They were also expected to always put the good of the state above their own personal interests. When Leonidas came to power, Sparta was already at war with the growing superpower to the east, the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the Persian Empire. Tensions had been high for years, and it seemed like a conflict between the two was inevitable. The catalyst that started the war was the Greek city of Eretria being sacked by the Persians. Then the Spartans declared war and sent out a general named Miltiades to lead the Greek forces against the invaders. The Greeks were victorious at the Battle of Marathon, where, according to legend, the Persian king Darius was so outraged by the defeat that he decided to personally lead his armies into Greece to finally subdue the insolent Greeks once and for all. But before he could do this, Darius died and his son Xerxes took over the empire and finished his father's project of conquering Greece. And so began the second Persian invasion of Greece. Now, despite Sparta being at war with the Persians since the death of the Spartans weren't actually involved in any major engagements until now. You see, the Spartans were happy to let other Greek city-states do most of the fighting, thinking that if the other Greeks were wiped out, then they would be next. But Athens wasn't having it. The Athenians argued that if the Spartans didn't help them, then the Persians would come for them next. It made sense, and so Leonidas assembled a force of 300 men, including 150 pairs of brothers and 800 help, the Spartan word for slaves, and headed north to join the Greek army at Thermopylae is now famous for being the location of the stand of the 300. But back then, it was just a small hot spring near the town of Leonidas didn't arrive at the hot springs with the intention of making a stand. In fact, he only arrived after the Greek coalition was already beaten and demoralized. When Leonidas got to Thermopylae, he found a massive Persian army waiting for him. The numbers vary depending on who you read, but some historians say the Persians may have numbered as much as 200,000 men. With their numbers so low, Leonidas knew a frontal assault on the Persians would be suicide, so he stationed his men in the narrow pass at Thermopylae. This pass was only about 60 feet wide and was flanked by towering mountains on either side. Through this pass, however, ran a small stream which the Spartans used to block the Persian advance. As soon as the sun rose, the Persians charged up the pass. They came in wave after wave, only to be mowed down by the Spartan fleet. Every time the Persians tried to flank the Spartans, they were met with volleys of arrows. As the day wore on, the Persians became more and more frustrated, as they couldn't break the Greek lines. By the end of the day, tens of thousands of Persians lay dead, although the Spartans had suffered no casualties. On the second day, more Persians arrived, and again, they were repulsed. But on the third day, a Persian soldier named Ephialtes betrayed the Greeks and showed the Persians a mountain path that led to the rear of the Greek position. Leonidas and his men were now trapped. All around them were the corpses of Persians who had fallen trying to take the pass. No doubt the Spartans knew their fate was sealed, but rather than surrender to the Persians, Leonidas and his men fought to the death. Each Spartan knew when he entered that pass that he may not come out alive. But they didn't care because dying in battle was the greatest honor a Spartan could ask for. So Leonidas and his men stood firm. The Persians attacked with everything they had, but the Spartans kept repelling them. When ammunition ran out, the Spartans fell back on their swords and shields, but eventually the Persians broke through. The Spartans continued to fight until every last man was dead. The Persians had won the battle, but they had paid dearly for it. The Spartans had shown the Persians that even the mightiest army could be defeated if they stood firm. But while the Spartans had won a glorious victory, it came at a cost. Of the 300 men that had entered the pass with Leonidas, only 150 had survived. But how did the Spartans keep fighting? When their numbers were so low, it was thanks to a Spartan law which forbade anyone from retreating from a battle until sunset. This law had saved the Spartans on numerous occasions, but now it had almost cost them the war. After all, the Persians had taken the pass and were now free to march on the rest of Greece. However, the Spartans weren't done yet. They regrouped and, with the help of other Greek states, launched a surprise attack on the Persians at the Battle of Plataea. The Greeks won a decisive victory and pushed the Persians back to Asia Minor. While Leonidas was dead, Sparta had saved Greece. And now we come back to our original question. Who was Leonidas? Well, it's hard to say. Most of what we know comes from Herodotus, who wrote his history of the Greco-Persian Wars over 2,000 years ago. Herodotus's work was considered a masterpiece at the time, but today it's regarded by many historians as propaganda written to glorify the Spartans. Other histories of the period have been lost to time, which makes it difficult to separate fact from fiction. However, we do know that Leonidas was the son of King Alexander and Queen Ep. We also know he was married to a woman named Helen, who was the sister of Gorgo, who was the wife of King Leo. We know Leonidas and Gorgo exchanged letters, some of which have survived to this day. But beyond these scant details, little is known of his early life. We don't know if Leonidas ever had any brothers, although ancient sources are unclear on this point. Some historians believe he did, but others argue he was an only child. If he did have brothers, it's possible they died young or in battle, which would have made Leonidas the heir to the throne. This would also explain why he was so eager to go to After all, if Sparta was to lose the war with the Persians, then there would be no Spartan left to inherit the throne. However, if Leonidas didn't have any brothers, then it is likely that he went to Thermopylae because he felt it was his duty to protect Sparta. What we do know is that Leonidas was a brilliant military commander. He was brave, strong, and intelligent, and he was also very lucky. If he hadn't been at Thermopylae when the Persians invaded, then it's likely that Greece would have been conquered. So while Leonidas may not have been a god, as the movie 300 would have you believe, he was certainly a hero of the highest order. So what do you think? Did Leonidas live up to his legendary status? Or was he simply a lucky commander who was in the right place at the right time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.